Welcome, everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Maurizio Benazzo.
My name is Aya Benazzo, and today we are speaking from our home here in Sebastopol, which is the home of Coastal Miwok and Southern Pomo indigenous people. And we, we've had quite of a year, and solstice has been for time immemorial, a time to gather and reflect and connect with Mother Earth and connect with the infinite cycles of life that we're intricately interwoven. In the Southern Hemisphere, people are celebrating the energy of abundance and summer and the richness of growth, the longest daylight. In the north, where we are, is the longest night of the year, and it's time for slowing down, resting, reflecting. And throughout history, this is the time where people have gathered in the face of darkness, of uncertainty, of celebration of life, and in ritual and reflection. In a world where we are facing so much anxiety, polarization, separation, unbearable suffering and injustice, we long the most that sense of timelessness, to immerse ourselves in the deep time, to remember the cycles we are part of, and also the sacredness of life, the divine spark that lives in each and every one of us. So today we're gifted with the presence of two incredibly beautiful elders, teachers, guides, so activists. I can put so many words, but they would not be able to describe the essence of these two beautiful human beings, Pat McCabe and Francis Whaler.
And then maybe I should read few words in case you don't know, but I doubt any of you will not know. So let's start with Francis. Francis Whaler is psychotherapist, writer, and soul activist. He's a master of synthesizing diverse streams of thought from psychology, anthropology, mythology, alchemy, indigenous culture, and poetic traditions. Thank you, Francis. It's such an honor and a joy to have you again in our community.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And then Pat McCabe, whose name is actually Woman Stands Shining. Woman Stands Shining is a Dene Navajo mother, grandmother, activist, artist, writer, ceremonial leader, and international speaker, drawing upon indigenous sciences to reframe questions about sustainability and balance. Thank you, Pat. It's a joy to have you again as well in our community. Yay.
Welcome.
Thank you both.
We will disappear in the background and we will let you, Pat, maybe we'll begin with you, and you will call us if you need us. But
thank you so much.
Thank you, Bob.
So I'll also greet each one here. Thank you. What an honor to be with you this morning. What an honor to have this opportunity to walk on this Holy Mother Earth, embodied with all of our senses, all of our heart, all of our spirit, and this one up here, this perceiver, just really feeling that the preciousness of that movement from the amorphous into this physical realm and this place of encounter. But I'll start by introducing myself and say she'e'ia tachi inashli aro ashi bashishchi ma'edishkeshne dashanale klaus chi da shache kwatawa tani inashli. My mama named me Patricia Catherine McCabe, and I come from Dene Nation, and I was just introducing my clans here. But I was also adopted into the Lakota spiritual way of life, and that's how I was given the name Wiyakpa Najinwi, womaning, standing, shining. And I'm like probably pretty much everybody, maybe not everybody, but I'm in so many transitions. And so I guess today I'm just speaking from my heart, from my soul, from my spirit, from my own deep and personal relationship with creator, creation, the holy people, all of our relations and each other here. My lineage, call on my ancestors. And why don't we just take a couple breaths here together to arrive and to I guess the word might be today, co-regulate, to come into hojo, to come into harmony together. So let's inhale and exhale and inhale and exhale. One more time, inhale and exhale. So I just want to say that I went out this morning and made offering to begin here, and I'm also going to join you afterwards to go out and make offering after we're finished with this particular time of being together. But standing outside and greeting that holy star, what always strikes me is that I always say that holy star, in my sense, that star is masculine, male, not to all people, but that's how I see that star. And so I always say, he knows just what to say to our mom. He knows exactly what to say to her, because the way that he speaks to her in that coding of light, in that song of light, in that language of light, causes life to just tumble out of her. And that's how we get to be these children standing in the middle of these two very passionate parents. And there's something so profound about that for me. And I was struck all over again this morning by that. So I just want to acknowledge that how grateful I am to be that child on this day. And also, for us, we've just gone into the waning, I guess, of the sun, and moving into our longer night. I liked how Francis said it. He said the long dark. And so it brings about a certain way within us and within all the life here in the north. But I also want to acknowledge that in the south, they're at their riotous highest heat, and that spilling of life coming out. And actually, I have here a little postcard from my Mapuche, just looking at my Mapuche relatives in Chile. So I'm thinking about all of those relatives down that way, and so I always feel like this earth is like we're in the inhale here, and then they're in the exhale there, and she's inhaling, and that life gets brought down to the south, and then she exhales that life out to the south, and now we're going to begin the other way, and now she's going to start coming up here, and that exhale of life is going to come up to us here. So just want us to feel that motion and and the mystery and the power and the beauty of it. So for me, one of the most beautiful parts of ceremony is it helps me to understand, to remind me of my right size, my right place. And so there's a humility factor, but also at some point, I always feel like the ceremony turns and brings me back to my own agency, my own capacity, my own contributions as human being, as the five-fingered ones. But right now, I want to acknowledge, as we begin this holy mini wachozane waka, this sacred water of life. So I always say we can't really acknowledge or talk about this one enough. So we always say, this is our life. Not only is this one life, but this one's alive. This one has consciousness. And this is what binds all living things together as one family, one living family. And so this consciousness is moving through us, not only as evaporation from the ocean to the clouds. And then I always say the mountains seduce the clouds over to drop the rain, and then the rain falls and the streams travel down and become rivers at the base and travel back to the sea. That's part of the story, but I also want to point out to us that we are also in that story, and all the life is in that story, because this water passes through every single life, every day, every day. And so this one truly is binding us together as this family of life, but also I feel like this one is gathering information, checking on our well-being, checking on our consciousness, checking on our thinking, and giving that information back to this Mother Earth. So hopefully some of you got this message that you could bring water here today. So I just want to have you acknowledge your water too. And at the end, I say this water is going to be listening to everything that is said, and even that's not said, even you who aren't necessarily speaking here on this screen. We're coming into one mind, one heart, one body, one prayer, one sweet Mother Earth here. So all that's present here is going to be with this water. And at the end of this ceremony, I'm going to bring this water outside and give this to the Mother Earth for her to consider everything, that have a little check-in about where we're all at this moment. So beautiful to be held by this water. And I say every single one of our ancestors had a drink of this water as well. And not only our ancestors, not only the human beings' ancestors, but all the life, all of the ancestors. I say Tyrannosaurus Rex had a drink of this water right here. And so it's this water carries the story of the history of life here on this Mother Earth too. And so one thing that I often say in the ceremonies that this water really, I think, has instructed me to say is that this water has seen it all. And in Indigenous history lineage, we say we have traveled through worlds already. Some people say this is the fifth world. Some people say this is the sixth world. And so this water has traveled through all of those huge transitions here on this Mother Earth. Some of them have included us, not all of them. And so I say, if you ever get low on faith, if you ever get low on vision and clarity, go to this one. Go to this one. This one already knows how to navigate all of that. And likewise, I was told, in front of the ceremonial fireplace, that there's no higher teacher than that grandpa fireplace, that there's no university that can touch the knowledge that's at that fireplace. And so I was told to think about how I was conducting myself in front of these elders. And so I want to also bring that fireplace here with us. And so if you have a candle, now would be the time too. You can join me in this. But I was in a ceremony in the rainforest in the south. And I saw a ceremony house in that night in vision. And in that vision, I saw all the different elders of all the different ways seated with their backs up against the wall of this ceremony house. And they were all looking to the center. And even they were looking at the center to this fireplace. And even they were conducting themselves with respect to this fire. And so at this time, I'm going to call on those elders, all the elders of all the ways that have ever been, that have been of guidance to this human being, that are part of the ever moving story of this walk and this story of creation ever unfolding. And I just ask that they might be here with us and that their fire connect to our fire, so we can light our candles here too. So we light this fire also in acknowledgement that our holy star is now going to begin to grow in light and in strength, and come back to us to speak to our mother about what comes next. And I wasn't sure, but I think I will. I want to sing an invitation song here. I'm going to sing this song. It's a grandmother calling song. And so I just ask that you might, get yourself comfortable here, respectful posture, but comfortable, opening, receptive, I guess is really the word. And I'm going to sing this through 4 times, and just imagine these grandmothers coming in, your own ancestors, the grandmothers that have achieved true ancestorhood, but also the grandmothers of all the life around you, the plants, the animals, and even the grandmothers of peoples that you have seen, perhaps. And we can picture them and see them in all of their regalia, whatever that might be. And they're going to come in from all the 4 directions bearing that medicine. And perhaps at this time we'll see them actually emerging from below the earth to come up to meet this holy star that's in this transition and turning on at this time. So we ha ya hey ya we ya hey ya huero we ha ya hey ya we ya hey ya huero hey yo we ha ya hey ya we ya hey ya huero hey ya hey yo we ha ya e ha ya we ha ya e ha ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya he ya we ya he ya huero we ha ya he ya we ya he ya huero hey yo we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya e ha ya we ha ya e ha ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero e yo we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya e ha ya we ha ya e ha ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero e yo we ha ya hey ya we ya he ya huero e ya he yo we ha ya e ha ya we ha ya e ha ya we ya he ya huero e ya e yo. And maybe let's take a breath together. Let's inhale and exhale. And again, inhale and exhale. So there's just one more piece I want to lay out here for us to set this container, as we had planned and talked about before we came to you. I was in full moon ceremony, and I had the honor of being in that ceremony with Mohawk Oneida women, the Bear Clan mother, Louise. I really only know her as Mama Bear. But we did a moon lodge ceremony for this last full moon of this, before this turning. And it really, my part was to speak for the second round, and my part was to speak about shedding. And part of that has to do with the female biology. you know. So in our moon time, every month we shed. If life isn't conceived, then we shed what isn't was no longer needed for that possibility. And so I was always told that that material is very sacred, very holy, and to consider carefully how to take care of that. And so I was told that it's the dismantling of the holy altar of life. And so I say, you know, the plan here on earth, it's life. That's her plan, clearly. And so to have that very beginning of the human being's contribution, our life, to be shed, that's very holy, very sacred material. And so I'm thinking about it that way today. And so I just invite us to think about what can be shed. Maybe there were so many possibilities and potentials that we really thought might come about, but they didn't come about at this moment. There's something else trying to move, or another timing, or another way. Or maybe there's things that we're glad to shed, that we're grateful we can celebrate. So I just ask us to think about that as we set this altar that's coming. And so we're dismantling an altar now. And again, that same way, we've been operating in an altar that had certain intentions, that was moving in a certain way. But now at this moment, we're going to go ahead and dismantle that and clear it out, and consider what it means to have that space, this wide open, empty altar in this moment of this turning. And I think with that, I just want to go ahead and turn it over to you, Francis. And thank you for letting me open this way.
Thank you so much, Pat. That was a beautiful invocation, a beautiful invitation for us to drop down and in, which is the direction of this day, I think, down and in. Zaya, Mauricio, did you have anything you needed to add in here, or are we good to?
No,
Definitely no.
Okay. In my work, I often talk about the signifying element of an adult human being is the capacity to hold grief in one hand and gratitude in the other, and to be stretched large by these two presences in our life. And so if we choose either one, we're in trouble. If we only choose grief, ultimately the heart will become saturated and bitter. But if we only choose gratitude, we lack a certain depth of compassion and understanding of what it means to be in this body and to be in this life. So together they form the prayer of life. So I'm sure we'll touch a lot of grief today, but I want to begin with gratitude and just honoring Maurizio and Zaya for all the beautiful work, not just of this day, but of your heart and soul commitment to serving this tender, beleaguered, struggling world. So thank you so much for that. Pat, it's an honor to share this time and space with you. Deeply grateful for this invitation to meet and collaborate. We've been walking parallel paths for a long time, so it's sweet to be here. I too want to honor my lineage, my soul lineage, that have been with me my entire life. I feel like I'm always walking companioned by many. So I want to honor all of you and all of you for coming today to spend a short amount of time, but to say yes to something like an honoring of solstice, the honoring of darkness, the honoring of light, both of them. So I'm just grateful to be here. So we're here in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously, and this is our winter solstice. So I'm going to focus my comments primarily on that. The longest night. We sometimes call it a holy night. And frequently, I know even in Western psychology, we keep trying to find a way to inch towards back to light. Like we have almost an aversion to the darkness, that we're always moving so quickly to the light. Oh, the sun's returning on today. Wonderful. I'm glad it does. And at the same time, I wonder what it would be like for us to linger a little bit longer in the richness of darkness. I know darkness is not easy. It can feel oppressive and isolating, but I want us to reimagine darkness as a place of imagination, of gestation, of silence, of mystery. Something happens in the darkness that all of life depends upon. You know, when I wake up and walk out of my door in the morning, I'm surrounded by redwood trees and Doug fir and maple and oak, and it's incredible. But they're only there because of what's happening in the darkness, and the exchange of microbes and mycelia and minerals and nutrients and the collaboration between root systems, all of this happening in the darkness. And I think there's something important for us to understand about the richness and the necessity of darkness, that we need it, not in the binary sense that we typically do, which is up and light is good, down and dark is bad. I want us to begin to see them as partners in an incredibly essential dance. So this time of year is an invitation, but the invitation is larger than this day. It is actually looking at where we are collectively as a species and as a planet, and what that darkness is inviting us to explore. Because in my estimation and my guess and what I can see in the collective field is that we're in a prolonged period of descent. We are going down, my friends. We are heading downward, down into the dark, down into in what mythology would call the underworld. And that is holy ground. And in this darkness, I would say that certain things can only happen in the darkness. It's a place of dismantling, of disruption, of decay, of endings. Pat used the word shedding and dismantling. Those are the qualities that come along with this movement of descent into darkness. They're not comfortable. We like steady, certain, reliable architectures. We need that. But at the same time, the soul, our own personal experience of soul, but also the soul of the world is saying, that's not where we are right now. We have entered what I call the long dark. And the long dark could be many decades, more like probably several generations, before we get to a place of saying we made it through. And that's a big if right now. We don't know if we're going to make it through, but we do know we're entering, and we have entered the long dark. And what I mean by the long dark is that it is a prolonged season where we're going to be asked to accompany and participate in the redreaming, reimagining of what living culture actually looks like. But they can't get to that place without going into the place of decay and endings. In the old traditions of alchemy, they would say we have entered into the nigredo, the blackening. And the blackening in that imagination was necessary for any movement towards soul or the sacred to occur. In other words, you can't begin down the road. You have to begin in a place of decay where things are ending and decaying and dying. And that's where we are right now. And I say it's necessary because certain things have to end and die right now. Patriarchy has to die in its old formulation. Capitalism has to die or end. Racial divisions have to be addressed. All of the issues we're facing with have a certain structural component to them that are not life-supporting. They're not life-serving. And so I feel that the soul of the world, the anima mundi is what it used to be called, is actually coaxing us and taking us down at this point. This is not a season of ascension. This is not a time of confidence and ease, of certainty. No, we are heading down, and that is the direction of soul. And we don't have a big language for soul in this culture. We have a lot of language for ascension. It's a kind of a heroic language of control, mastery, confidence, domination. All of that language is part of that ascension culture. but we are now heading down. And I want to just say that that's a very sacred invitation. And again, not an easy one. So what I'd like to do in a short amount of time is just talk about the medicine that we need for the long dark. Because I imagine, just on a show of hands, how many of you feel an abundance of grief, fear, uncertainty, anxiety? I'm just curious. I would love to someone to put me on a smaller screen here. There we go. Didn't work. I can't do it. All right. I'm just curious that I'm guessing that most of the people on the screen feel this.
Yes.
No.
You're up
Everyone
to,
is
you're up
raising
to about
their hand.
180 hands raised so far.
Okay, good, good. I would love to see them. But yes, 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 yes. We know it. We feel it, that we've left the ordinary world. We left the familiar world, I should say. This is also part of the ordinary world, the descent. We've just been avoiding it for the last 2,000, 3,000 years. So I want to talk about the medicine that we need, because it's easy to feel overwhelmed, to feel saturated with sorrow, to feel a contraction in our anxious hearts. And that's also part of the symptomology of this time, is that we're far too alone with this situation. So what is the medicine that we need? And as I love the word medicine, because I've been sitting with that term. I've been a therapist for 42 years. And this idea of medicine or healing is a central part of that work. But medicine has many more meanings than just simply improving or repairing or recovering. Soul medicine has to do with how do we repair and restore communities that have been stripped and scattered by abuse or by violation or by trauma. How do we repair our relationships to the world, to the earth itself? Soul medicine can come in and really help us to do those very essential things. They can help us repair our relationship to ancestors and to one another. So soul medicine is what I want to spend my time talking about. And I sat with this question for many months now. I realized there are three ways I want to speak to this. The first is what is the medicine that we need for the long dark? The second one is what is the medicine we bring to the long dark? And the third is what is the medicine we find in the long dark? Okay. I mean, again, I wish we had more time to talk about what I'm implying by the long dark, but I think you can sense that. So the first medicine that we require is what we are witnessing right now, which is friendship and community. We cannot face the long dark. We cannot face the levels of loss and grief and trauma and anxiety in isolation. So one of my teachers said, this is the solitary journey we cannot do alone. So no one can walk this walk for you, but it's almost impossible for us to stay open and have our hearts and our love falling into the world if we're in isolation. Having worked with grief for so many decades now, I know the necessity of gathering in circle to address the sorrows that we carry. That was the original healing matrix for all work that humans did in community or individually, was communal. None of this work ever happened in isolation. You know, people call it a private practice when they come to see me. I want to see you in your private practice. Well, that's lovely. But ultimately, we need a much larger healing vessel than sitting in my room alone. I often say that's a place to learn how to tolerate contact with those vulnerable, saturated places of grief and shame, but ultimately the healing space has to be bigger. So friendship and community are the first medicines. There's a lovely term I came across a couple of years ago, first introduced by my dear friend Erin Giesemann-Rapke. She introduced me to the term refugia. And she got that from Kathleen Dean Moore in a wonderful book called Great Tide Rising. And refugia, she shares the story of how some years ago, scientists returned to the Mount St. Helens site where the blast happened in the 1980s, I think it was sometime. And they didn't expect to find anything there because the blast was so deep of ash and cinder and rock, and they didn't expect to find life. But what they found was that there'd be a little lea, and underneath that lea, a small acorn had sprouted, or a mole had broken through, or a little fern was growing. And they call these refugias, small places where life endures, small pockets of life where life endures. And that's what sand is. That's what Pat is doing. We're creating refugias, small places where life can endure. And that's a beautiful thing to offer one another. You know, and I teach a lot, and wherever I go, no matter what the topic is, people are there to really address the issue of loneliness, that they really want to find places of belonging. And that's beautiful. And I welcome that. But I often say to them, at some point, however, you can't be someone constantly looking for belonging. You have to become a house of belonging. You have to invite people into spaces that are nourishing and fortifying. So not only are we needing friendship and community, we have to also help build friendship and community. Big topic. The second medicine we need for the long dark is imagination. Now, this is a term that we rarely use in Western psychology. James Hillman, one of my primary teachers, shared a funny story of, well, it's not so funny, of reading one of the main textbooks that are used in the psychology courses across the country. And he looked up imagination and had one paragraph. And the paragraph was that imagination can interfere with the functioning of rationality. So it's a trouble. You know, imagination is actually a bother. It's an interference. But I'm telling you, what we need right now, probably more than anything, is an imaginal experience, an imaginal encounter with the world. And what I mean by imagination is not something I do. I don't imagine. I am imagined. It's like dreaming at night. I don't plan the dream. I am dreamt. And so what I'm saying here is that the earth is a dreaming being. She is constantly offering inspirations, imaginations, images, dreams, rituals, songs. And it's our job to become receptive to that. That means that our imagination has to be activated and alive. Jung said that image making is the primary activity of psyche, of soul. So to get close to soul or the soul of the world, pay attention to the image, to the imagination. There's a wonderful term that comes out of the Inuit people north of the Arctic Circle, and the term is Kartsaluni, spelled Qarrtsiluni, Kartsaluni. The word translates sitting quietly together in the darkness, waiting expectantly for something creative to burst forth. Sitting quietly together in the darkness, waiting expectantly for something creative to burst forth. I think this is the most beautiful metaphor for where we are as a human community right now. We have to get quiet. We're not going to figure our way out of the long dark, by the way. We have all the information we need. This is not a lack of data right now, but it's a lack of affection. It's a lack of connection. It's a lack of imagination. So I think what that image of Kartsaluni says is we have to get quiet long enough to hear the dream of the earth returning. What is she wanting from us? How do we become human beings again in the true sense of that word? This ritual that they do, the Inuit people, is a life-giving ritual. They have to get quiet enough to listen for the song of a whale. And they can't go out and hunt until the whale people say, Here's the song, and we're willing to give you one of our people to feed your people. So what we're trying to do is pay attention deep enough to listen and catch the intonations of a dreaming earth. We've received many rituals out here that feel like they are reparative rituals. They're helping us remember how to give thanks, how to initiate our young ones, how to repair the world when it's torn through traumas, how to grieve together. We're being taught, again, the rhythms of soul and communal soul, which I'm deeply, deeply grateful for. Okay. The third thing we need, third thing we need for the long dark is to remember our deep time ancestral inheritance. That we are actually the inheritors of a rich and robust lineage. We wouldn't be here if that wasn't the case. That somehow our ancestors figured out how to create what I call the trail on the ground. And every one of us comes from a culture that followed the trail on the ground. I was sharing with Pat earlier when we first came on this call, having met her for the first time on Monday, listening to her speak, I could feel this deep time ancestral inheritance was so alive in her being that she wasn't speaking as a private individual citizen person. She was speaking as the current iteration of a collective imagination that created Pat McCabe. And so we are here because of this deep time ancestral inheritance. I can't tell you how many times in a grief ritual or any kind of ritual we do, at the end of it, someone will say something like, I've never done anything like that before in my life, but it felt oddly familiar. This deep time ancestral inheritance is what Carl Jung called the unforgotten wisdom at the core of the psyche. So we have the markers, we have the cairns, we have the guidance, if we can begin to tap into that and tap into this ancestral inheritance. It's what we need. We're so obsessed with progress and forward movement that we forget where we come from. We forget how we were shaped as human beings. And in what I often say is the two primary sins of Western civilization are amnesia and anesthesia. We forget and we go numb. And we go numb because of what we have forgotten. And we have an amazingly complex anesthesia industry in North America. We know how to get you to stay asleep. But what we're being asked for in the long dark is to wake up and to come back into some semblance of what it means to be human. Very briefly, the medicine we bring to the long dark. This is important for us to understand because we often feel impotent and powerless, as if we have nothing to offer to the world, as if we are somehow empty-handed. But that's not the truth. The fact, however, is a little uncomfortable, that the medicine that we bring to the long dark lies right next to your wound. There's an old phrase out of ancient Greece, in your wound is your genius. So to look to see what can I bring to the long dark, all we have to do is look towards where we suffer, because that's where we're most sensitive. That's where we're most vulnerable and tender as a human being. And the wound informs us. You notice that we are compelled to return to the territory of the wound again and again and again, not out of some obsession, but because that's also where we find soul. Soul, James Hillman said, soul is most noticeable in places of affliction, both individually, but also communally and culturally. We notice the places of soul by where there is suffering, there is grief, there is tenderness, and that's where we have to go. So the wounds that we carry inform us about how we want to be out in the world or how we can be out in the world. My wound was shame. And I hated not just the shame, but myself for many decades. And I remember going to therapy, and the first thing I said to my therapist was, I want you to help me get rid of some parts of me. Like if I could just succeed in getting rid of these, I'd be tolerable. I'd be acceptable out in the world. They would actually, make space for me out in the community. Obviously, that's not the case. My gift, my medicine comes through my experience of shame. I was given a name also by the community in West Africa, Nitoyona, which means he who sets straight the bone. So my medicine is to help go into those very twisted, contorted places and help reset the bone. That doesn't mean it's perfect. You might still have a limp, but you can walk, or you can reach, or you can hold. We don't have to get rid of anything, but we do need to know how to hold it with compassion. Another medicine we bring to the long dark is our capacity to turn toward what is there. So if grief comes in, which I don't know about you, yes, I do, I can guess. We all feel an incredible quantity of sorrow in our bodies, and it's only going to increase. I wrote the preface for a book called Choosing Earth by Dwayne Elgin. And it was the hardest piece of writing I ever did because I had to read the book. And the book was the next 7 decades of what may transpire as a species and as a planet. And they don't look good. They were hard to read. There are slivers of opportunity here, he says. But what we need to do is be able to step into this as a community. And one of the things I wrote in that essay was that grief will be the keynote for the coming decades. So we need to know how to attune to that grief. Again, not privately, but communally. But that means being able to turn toward it and not simply find ways to avoid it. This is really our soul work, I think, at this time. And the medicine we find in the long dark, well, the first thing is, again, reimagining. The Buddhist teacher, Deborah Eden Tull, calls it the luminous darkness. David White called it a deep and dazzling darkness. Joan Halifax called it a fruitful darkness. So the very first thing we can do in finding the medicine in the long dark is beginning to see the sacredness of darkness. We gain a second sight, what in alchemy they would call the sol niger, the black sun, or what Susan Murphy called the dark adapted eye. We begin to see things differently when we attune ourselves to the darkness and don't try to find our way back out to the exit sign as quickly, but linger, hold vigil in the darkness and see what comes. See what comes. It is the place of dreaming. So the first medicine we get out of the long dark is entanglement. We begin to recognize how mutually entangled everything is with our lives. Pat was talking about the water being in everything, not just currently, but since the dinosaurs, apparently, right? That this energy is what circulates through us, quite literally, and emotionally and spiritually. This energy of water. We are entangled with everything. Jung said, at root, the body's carbon is simply carbon. Hence, at bottom, psyche is simply world. So when we go down deep enough into ourselves, into our depths, what we discover is that we are not separate from the world, that we are intimately entangled with the world. And it's that recognition that will allow us to actually care for the world. We're not going to respond out of moralism or out of duty, only out of affection. Wendell Berry says it all turns on affection. So to understand that I am as much world as I am self, I am as much communal as I am personal, then we have a way of coming back into the intimacy and sovereignty dance of soul. Let's see. And the last medicines that I want to just speak about, there are probably many more, are rest and patience. This is medicine we can find in the long dark. Partly because we can't push the darkness. We can't force it. We can't make something happen. So we actually have to cultivate the capacities for patience. And patience is a certain quality of hospitality that slows us down to listen, to attend, to receive, to notice, to witness. Patience has a way of granting us a pause. Particularly in white Western capitalistic culture, we're manic. We're driven by speed. And that is not the rhythm of soul. I've shared this story, many of you have heard me tell it, but my first mentor, Clark Berry, was 27 years old when they licensed me as a therapist. And I was smart enough to know I didn't know anything about sitting with people. And I found Clark and sat down with him the first time, this ancient man of 60. And he reached over and patted this big rock he had by his chair. And he said, "This is my clock. I operate at geologic speed. And if you're going to work with the soul, you need to learn this rhythm." Then he pointed at his clock and said, it hates this. So I think part of the long dark is this movement towards stopping, slowing down. My friend Bayo Kamalafi says in his culture, in the Yoruba tradition, they have a phrase, times are urgent, we must slow down. You know, there's something important and imperative about us coming back into the rhythm of life, the rhythm of soul, and not the rhythm of the machine. The machines can be useful, obviously. We're here right now because of this amazing technology. But at the same time, the rhythm that the soul is asking for is patience and rest. Rest is almost, what would you call it? It's antithetical to the impulse of society to always be productive, always be achieving, always be doing. So rest is heretical. But I think it's also, again, one of those places where we become receptive to the dream time. And that's where we need to look right now. So what I really want you to take with you from this little offering is that we are not without medicine. We have what we need to make it through these decades and generations. Most of us on this screen will not see the end of the long dark. I certainly won't. But we can plant seeds now. And we can water them with our tears and with our affection. And we can generate something that is sustainable for the generations to come. So much depends upon us right now. What we bring, what we do, how we live, how we love. This is really the medicine that we carry. We are not bereft. We're not empty-handed. We're not powerless. No matter who's in charge, we have the medicine we need. So I'll stop with that. Thank you.
Thank you both, Pat, and thank you, Francis, for this deep medicine. And we're not done. Pat, can we weave you back in and see what else wants to be offered? And it's such exquisite space you two created. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Sometime I'd like to slow it all down and have a little dialogue in between all those. But for the moment, a couple things that you reminded me of. I was thinking about. I was on a prayer journey to Japan, multi-faith, and we did go to Hiroshima. And so it was such a juxtaposition because we were arriving to Hiroshima on a bullet train. So we arrive at like 200 miles an hour, like literally, and there was 50 of us, and the task was to get all the luggage off the bullet train, and all of us off in the 2 minutes that we had for that stop, right? So it was hustle, hustle, hustle. So I still remember that. And then we get on the buses, and then all of a sudden it's just like, doing, you are in Hiroshima. And so then the pace like stops. And I remember we got to the hotel. I was on the 15th floor, and I just burst into tears. Just knowing, not knowing conceptually, but my body knowing something really profound and big is about to happen here, because I'm face to face with a part of the human story. Oof. And actually there was a little earthquake right when I was having this moment. I was like, is it just me? Or I was like, no, I was hearing the glasses in the hotel room rattling. So the earth was like responding to this this moment I was having. And but we did go to the Memorial Museum in Hiroshima, and it really brought to bear so much of what you're speaking about. But I just want to mention this one moment of meeting, perhaps some of you know her, Toshika Tanaka. And Toshika Tanaka was a survivor of she was in Hiroshima at the time that the bomb was dropped. And they have a name for those people, Hibakusha. These are the survivors of the atomic bombs in Japan. And so she talked about what that was like. And she talked about, I mean, she didn't speak specifically, but I know that she had to go through a lot medically to deal with radioactive poisoning and such. But she talked about how they had said that the life wasn't going to return for like a decade. And I think she said it was even like just a little over a year. She remembers walking and on the streets that were still remain, and a leaf appeared. And the scent she had of that leaf appearing. And she also talked about, and so I could just feel that in my body. And also she talked about what got her through was looking up at the sky and knowing that there was still the sky, and the sky was pure, and the sky could hold all of this. So there was just something about what you were speaking about that we actually have. Some of us are still present, who have been through some of these really cataclysmic, radical changes, and there are others, and there are some who are going through them presently. And I'll just speak to the grief just a little bit too. That you really struck me. I think a huge part of the grief we swim in is because we know it could have been otherwise. we have a deep sense that it could have been otherwise, and somehow we've missed something, or we got deceived or distracted, or and so I know for our culture, and yet we still have cultures who remember another, have a, even though I didn't get to live it, like you were saying, that ancestry is still present enough of living a different human presence on this Mother Earth. And so I guess as I was listening to you, I was just really feeling that that's part of my role here is to keep invoking that that those other ways of understanding of being human presence on this planet, on this sweet Mother Earth, and what that was like. And then I think the last thing I'll say, and I think we're thinking about taking a little intermission, a little break to pause, but I'll just say that when I think about, if I were going to name the medicines for the long dark, one of the things that this feels like it's an opportunity for, and what my guides gave me, so they give me little frameworks to work on. And part of my survival way in all throughout being a survivor of recent attempted genocide, and on all the fallout that has come through my people, the land, my family, the water, everything, my prayer is, show me how to participate fully in the very highest possibility for life, light, and love. And I've been making that prayer for over a decade now, and I trust it. I trust that what is coming before me in this moment is mine to do. That I'm being inspired to play my part. My belief is that I signed up to come here now, And so everybody that I look at, and all of you who are on this call in this moment, I say thank you. You are badass. you are really courageous to decide to come here. And so there's something that I have to bring here. So that's how I manage. I don't have to let my mind go in 100 different directions at once to put out 100 different fires at once. I can be present with what's in front of me. But I will say that one of the ways that they've also given me is they said, rather than try to tell a new story from this point forward, you would be better off retelling the old story. And if you go back and retell the old story, you'll automatically change your trajectory into the future. And so I've been working with this for, I guess it's a decade now. That came in 2014 at the New Story Summit at Findhorn. And so when you were speaking, it's striking me that this is an opportunity in this pause, in this like not knowing, we're, like you say, we're very intent on creating, and so many gatherings right now are like trying to come up with the new story. And my sense is the reason the Spirit said that to me is because they're like, you don't have the materials to come up with the new story. You're still so in the old story that you can't begin to imagine what this new story is. But you got 20/20 hindsight. And so this is an opportunity for considering what are ways to retell the stories that we think we know. So I'll leave it there for the moment.
Beautiful.
Francis.
Is it time?
What would be really nice if you would like to share a word, everyone, maybe open the chat and everyone brings a word or a couple of words that you want to place in our collective space here, that you want to shed or remember or dream forward, anything that sparks from your heart. Unity, heart, confluence,
Birds,
graceful,
patience, love.
listening,
Name of
beauty,
song, please.
tolerance, and wisdom,
courage.
gratitude, love, trust, tenderness, nurtured, compassion, transmutation, hospitality, gentleness,
Willingness, beauty,
beauty,
listen,
moonlight,
moonlight, sweetness,
vulnerable,
vulnerability, peace, unimaginable, open,
empty,
humility, openness, invitation, diamond, listening to silence,
forgiveness,
dream
release,
time,
honor,
becoming a well
all
elder,
life, the
remembering,
mother,
receptivity, surrender,
purity, relevance,
compassion, togetherness, humility, selflessness, openness, allowing,
healing,
refugia.
This
A
is
company
really
love, refugia, moving, connection, honoring, presence, encourage, love, holding, sacrifice, generation for future generations, love, light, love,
mycelium,
to remember, grand
sacredness, liberation. It's like we have a vocabulary, and we don't know the dream, but we are walking with seeds. These are seeds. I feel hold us through the long dark.
Yeah, and for me, this came up in our conversation as we were thinking about this moment, and maybe now's a time to say this. But so in as I mentioned at the beginning, there's this very, very long history that I would say Western science doesn't necessarily acknowledge, but that indigenous cultures do, about these different worlds we've traveled through. And we know something about moving from one world to the next. And my clan grandfather talked to me a little bit about this. He says that, when we lost one of the worlds to the flood, we know why we lost that world, which I find amazing. But he says that the reason we lost that world is because men and women had decided that they could live without each other. So there's some kind of implication there that our way and our moving with, I'll say, the construct of Earth or against that construct of Earth plays a role in this. So, on the one hand, everything is so much larger than us, and on the other hand, we have our place in it, and we have influence and we have contribution to this creation story that's ongoing. It didn't just happen back then; it's happening right now with everything that we're choosing and thinking and feeling and doing. But the story of the flood is that Dragonfly came to the people and instructed some of the people to get into the hollow reed, and that if they did that, then they could survive this flood. So they did, and so the floodwaters rose, but it didn't go over the top of the hollow reed. And then when the floodwaters subsided, the people emerged out of the hollow reed, and those were the people who continued on into the next world. And so I think about them all the time, actually, more and more. And what's happening for me around that, and so as I'm watching everything that's going through the chat here, is I ask myself, how does my life support the people in the hollow reed at this moment? Support those who might travel on. And maybe that's going to be just a few of us, or maybe it's going to be a whole lot of us. I don't know. I don't really know what the changing of worlds really means at this moment. But I draw on that experience, and for me, I find some release right now in this idea that I can contribute to that moment. And so my goal and my orientation shifts from how am I going to make it? I'm going to stockpile my food and my guns and my whatever. It takes that part off of me, and I'm not thinking about how is my kind going to make it? The people that I align with, the Democrats or the Republicans. It's like, no, it's not about that. It's just, how do I support that which would move forward and still receive this sacred gift of life? And in that pause of the 5 minutes, I thought, the thing that I'm thinking about on this altar that will be carried forward is, I really want to continue to receive this holy gift of life with both hands. I say I'm a sensuous and sensual being, and so just to continue to participate in the sensuousness of this earth. But and I feel like that actually is a contribution to those who will travel on. But what I love about this idea of how can I support those who will be the ones to travel on, whether it's me or not, is it invokes what I feel like is one of the deepest principles of the construct of Earth, which is fearless generosity.
Mm.
I say this Mother Earth's economy is radical abundance and fearless generosity, and so what I notice, the more I am able to, and it's antithetical, to use your word, to modern world paradigm and the principles and values there, which is hoarding and amassing, and that's how we're going to control everything, But fearless generosity invokes something from all the life around me. Like animals respond to that, clouds respond to that, winds responds to that, and in my world, the spirit world responds to that. And so there's a principle there. And so this idea of how can I support those who are in the hollow reed and might emerge, invokes that medicine, which allows us to encounter mystery and magic. So as people are naming those things, I'm thinking about those are maybe some of the things that we offer to those in the hollow reed. And I'm not sure if you have anything to say. You want to say to that, Francis?
Just the imagery is so alive. I have the opportunity of working with lots of people who are going through what I call a rough initiation. That it's an uncontained encounter with death, that it's not something authorized by elders and ancestors and community and ritual. It's you're tossed into, like when I work with cancer patients, that suddenly they've entered a whole different reality. And in some ways, that's where we are collectively. We're going through a rough initiation, which is the invitation towards maturation, right? That somehow we are being asked to ripen here in this crucible of time and heat and difficulty and challenge. And I think, like when we're doing a grief gathering, I'll end with a prayer that says something like, You know, we didn't do this just for ourselves. We didn't do this just so we felt better. We did this so our hearts would be less encumbered by sorrow and that our love could fall more ardently into the streets, into our neighborhoods, into our families, into our communities. So I think the invitation here is towards a deep ripening so that, again, if it all turns on affection, we need to have access to our affection. We need to feel our love for this world, for the robins and the juncos and the ferns and everything else that astonishes us on a daily basis. But to do that, we have to have our hearts open, and that means being current with our grief. Because if grief begins to back up inside of us, it doesn't just sit there, it turns into sediment. It turns into this heaviness that oppresses the heart and has us closed down. So our work right now, dear friends, is to stay current with sorrow and to practice fearless generosity at the same time. So our hearts have to stay open and unencumbered. So we're back to all of the medicines that we need, friendship and community and imagination, all of those things. And Pat, I think you brought in, a medicine that I often speak about is beauty, the necessity of beauty, also to keep the heart. James Hillman said that beauty is the means by which the gods touch the senses, reach the heart, and attract us into life. So without beauty, what is it that attracts us into life? Economics is fine, but it tends to be focused on the efficient, but not on beauty. So we need beauty also as a soul resource at this time. And then I would close by saying the poem I often share at the end of our gatherings is a Rumi poem. He said, "Those tender words we shared with one another are stored in the secret heart of heaven. One day, like rain, they will fall and spread, and our mystery will grow green across the earth."
And our mystery will grow green across the earth.
Yeah. May it be so, huh?
Yeah.
What a joy to be with you, Pat.
And you, Francis, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I don't want this to end. You're such such an inspiration. Every word comes like if you really feel. I felt the medicine entering my body. Never every word both of you shared is so beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
We did feel we entered some kind of different time, timelessness. It's the end of time. We just started.
So beautiful.
And something big that really hit me, Francis, you said that medicine doesn't mean like immediate healing. Like we think medicine, I take the medicine and healing is here. But medicine is this, what you both shared, and us learning how to be with a fractured world, with illness, with disease, with disbalance. And the medicine, that is medicine as well. So that's a huge reminder for many, for me, who I often, get caught in how healing needs to look like and feel like.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I
again,
don't think we know what this healing is going to feel like or look like.
Yeah. And healing is not individual, right? That's the other thing. We consider medicine an individual thing. Medicine is not individual. Medicine is something we give to the plant, to the bird, to nature, to the sky. Because healing is only,
Any final?
The invitation is towards remembrance, right?
Yes.
I mean, remembering is healing. It gives us ground, gives us, again, that place where we can come back to again and again. I mean, every practice I know of on the planet, whether it's ritual or prayer or meditation or yoga or whatever it is, it's all about remembrance. They're all practices in not forgetting who we are, where we belong, and what is sacred. And if we can answer those three questions, we're okay. That's what the medicine's about.
Yeah. Like, yeah, what you said, Pat, is not about coming up with new stories. It's about remembering those
Mhm.
ancient streams of life and wisdom that we're part of. And
Right.
we are in the forgetting. Modernity has been forgetting those, that we belong to those streams of life. Pat, any final words or a prayer or anything that feels alive in your heart to complete this space together, this time together, and to carry it forward?
Thank you. I'm going to go back to something you said, Francis. You said, I really was struck by this whole amnesia, anesthesia. There's the poetics, but also the relevance. So it takes a lot of anesthesia to remain in amnesia. In such a lively, lively, lively place where the whole thing is about life and encounter and mystery and magic and co-creation. It takes a lot of anesthesia to hold all that down, actually. So I think about that sometimes. But you were saying, so now, this is the time when we need to wake up, and you're also calling it the time of the long dark. And so the image I had was, so we must wake up, and we're going to wake up in the dark.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, so what happens when we wake up in the dark? When we wake up in the middle of the night in the dark, and we're not quite sure what woke us up. That feeling of disorientation, a little bit of agitation, perhaps even a little bit of fear, a little bit of loneliness, a moment of feeling separation. And so maybe that's akin to what you were asking folks to raise their hand about. Is that what we're feeling? To wake up in the dark, to wake up and realize that some of the things we were taught to rely on actually have nothing to do with earth and life, which, as it turns out, is a very important factor in co-creating. um, and our identities that are so tied to those institutions and human configurations and such, and so our identity is starting to unravel. So I guess I just say, to wake up in the dark. I go back to this one, to remember the water, that the water has unshakable faith. The water only knows life, only knows quenching, only knows, I talk to this water in the shower too. And I thank this water for renewal, for soothing, for calm, and the same for this fireplace here. Every one of our ancestors had a relationship with this fire. And if they didn't, then none of us would be here right now. So we've lived in a time when the fire came with the flick of a switch, but we might not be continuing that way. We don't know. I sort of doubt it, actually. But this one has been a medicine, an ally for us, and knows the way, and knows the way of Earth. So I'll just say a quick prayer to just say, Creator, Holy Mother Earth, Holy Mani Chosen Ewakan, Holy Water of Life, Holy Grandma Grandpa Fireplace, the air, that has always been here, the Earth. We are your loving children, and we are traveling with you, and we are having to remember a great deal about who we are and who we are not. And so I just ask for your guidance and your direction. And I ask that you help us to really be able to feel and see and know all the ways in which we are held so tight, as we always have been, with benevolence, with love, with great love and care, and that we actually came fully equipped to offer something, to offer our gift, and illuminate what that is, in the quiet, in the stillness, but also with the return of
Francis, feel
Long
free to
pause.
complete.
Feel
Feel free to complete
the return of
of the light.
Yes. Yeah. Mm.
Mm. Beautiful. We invited back to stillness, back to silence.
Mm.
There, Pat is back with us.
All
We
right,
were
drop out on
invited
you.
at the end to be in the stillness and silence with you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you so much for your gifts, for your wisdom, for your presence. And may we continue remember that we are remembered and we are dreamt and held by life. And like Pat says, the whole thing here is for life. Life, we give birth to life.
Mm.
Life.
Mhm. Thank you, both of you, for hosting this space, and all of you who came and listened and shared your hearts with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
And
we'll keep this going, Pat.
yes,
To be
yeah,
continued.
yes.
in our community, in this community, please. Yeah, and thank you to Carlos, Lisa, Sarah, who
The
put together, the San
same
team who
that
put
has
together
been
this.
making possible this to
Yeah.
happen for us to come together over
Yeah,
the years.
thank you.
Thank you, and be with this moment of stillness before the light begins to return gradually. Maybe fully let it in. Blessings to all, blessings to what allow us to be here together today.